Hey there everybody, it's Sean from Seattle Coffee Gear, and today we're going to talk about 5 things you should know about coffee. These tips are focused a little bit more towards folks who are just starting their coffee journey and are questions that we get here on the channel, in our retail stores, or just general questions that we've heard that we want to make super clear for y'all. One question we get asked a lot is, how should I store my coffee beans? Should I put them in the freezer so they last longer, or are they good out on the counter? In general, I don't personally recommend putting coffee beans in the freezer, as the water in the freezer risks damaging the flavor of the coffee. Technically, there's a way to get it done where if you were to vacuum seal each individual dose of coffee before it goes into the freezer, and when you take it out, you are using one dose at a time. It requires a lot of measurement and precision to be sure that you don't accidentally ruin your coffee. If freezing coffee sounds complicated, there is really good news. Coffee is really easily stored outside of the freezer and at room temperature. When the bag is sealed, coffee is generally good for the first 2 to 3 months to maintain its peak flavor. Once the bag is opened, however, we want to be mindful of oxidation and how to slow that process down. First off, we could use an airtight container, like one of these, to store coffee and keep it at its peak freshness for a little bit longer. We also just want to be sure that it's in a semi-cool, dark environment. These methods will help keep the coffee fresh and tasting good for a while. Getting into the second question we get a lot of the time, it's the type of coffee bean you use and when to use it. We hear questions of, why is single origin coffee important? What is a blend? Is espresso roast okay on different brewing methods? So let's dive into those a little bit. When we're talking about single origin coffee, we are talking about coffees that are grown in one farm or one region. This gives coffee tasters a chance to really taste the influence of how the local environment impacted the flavor of their coffee. Coffee that is grown in different regions will have different tasting notes, and that's super fun to explore. A blend, on the other hand, uses multiple coffees, sometimes from different regions, sometimes from different aspects of the same region. Roasters will do this to create a consistent flavor profile so you know what you're getting every time you pick up your bag of coffee, and to make it a little bit easier to brew. Sometimes, if it only has one tasting aspect, it's really hard to feature that in a brew. But in a blend, since there are multiple coffees in there, it's going to be more likely to be pleasant right away. The final one that I get all the time in my espresso classes is espresso roasts. What are they, and why do we see that on the bag? Espresso roast, when we see it on a bag of coffee, is a suggestion from coffee roasters, generally meaning they think that it'll taste good when brewed as espresso. They can be brewed on any brew method, and any coffee can be brewed using an espresso machine. Typically, espresso roasts will feature a chocolatey, caramely, or a little bit more roasty profile, as that's more in line with expectations of espresso. Personally, I love light roasted espressos because I find them fruity, vibrant, and exciting. Another question I get a lot of time when I'm talking about coffee notes is, oh, I don't like flavored coffee. What does this chocolate note mean? So, addressing flavored versus non-flavored coffee. In flavored coffees, typically these are lower quality commercial grade coffees that maybe aren't as exciting, so a roaster will add some kind of oil to the coffee to add flavors to it. This is how we end up with black coffee that has French vanilla, pumpkin spice, without needing to add any syrup to it. They have supplemented the coffee with additional flavors. When we see tasting notes on bags of specialty coffee, these are just meant to be as a way to describe the coffee for folks. There is no extra additives in that coffee, and this is how it's meant to naturally taste. Personally, for me, I prefer specialty coffee because I find it really clean and interesting, and if I'm in the mood to add a syrup or a flavor into my coffee, I want to be in control of it. So if I'm making a vanilla latte, I'll add that to my espresso before I add my milk, or if I'm doing things like my personal favorite drink, a honey cortado, that's exactly what I'll do. If you're looking to make a fun coffee drink at home, one coffee that I love is the Tropical Weather from Onyx here. This coffee has just a very light, sweet, kind of like mango-y taste. I really enjoy it. Some ways that I've tried this drink are in like an espresso spritzer, where this light coffee mixes with our sparkling water, making a really bright, refreshing beverage. Or, and I know that this one's a controversial option here, I love this in a coffee shandy, where I put this in a shaker with some lemonade. It is really, really good and something that I enjoy drinking in the summer. Another point of clarity that I like to make is how grind influences the flavor of coffee. We hear things like espresso grind or French press grind, but what does that actually mean? Ultimately, what's happening when we grind coffee is we are crushing that bean into smaller and smaller particles. The smaller it gets, the easier it is to pull things out of the coffee into the beverage. And you might think, wow, that sounds awesome, so I'll just go super fine grind and get the most out of my coffee. That way I get the most and best taste. Not so much. If we pull too much out of our coffee, it's going to taste really bitter and very hard to drink. And if we pull too little out of our coffee, it's going to taste really sour and acidic. We are looking to match our grind size and make it just that perfect middle ground so it is sweet and balanced and really tasty. For each brew method, there is an ideal grinding range that we are looking for. If we're looking at a gravity method like this, we're looking for like about a medium grind, so that way the coffee is allowed to flow and drip through. On an immersion method like a French press, we want our grind size coarser, so that way the water doesn't pull things constantly from the coffee, making it in that bitter profile. And then finally, if we're doing something like espresso, we want our grind size super, super fine, so that way our coffee will add resistance under that high pressure brewing environment, giving us really good tasting espresso. The final question I get all the time is, what brew method is best? I don't know. Depends on the barista. Do you want to take some time and really savor the experience every morning? Maybe a manual pour over setup is right for you. Are we looking for coffee on the go because we're busy and getting about life? Maybe we go for a drip coffee pot. Or are we looking for that full hardcore barista experience and we need an entire espresso setup? It really depends on the brewer and what you are looking for out of your coffee. We are always happy to open that discussion and find the brewer that works best for you and your lifestyle so you can get the most out of your coffee. For me personally, I brew espresso every day. I've worked in a cafe and it is the brew method that I get a lot of joy out of. Sometimes I need a more mindful, slow experience when I'm brewing coffee. That's when I get out my pour-over kettle and set up either a V60 or a Chemex, and I just let the experience be relaxing and mindful. It's really nice. Those are 5 things we think you should know about coffee. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments down below. In the description below this video, you'll find a sign up for our email newsletter so you can stay up to date on all things Seattle coffee gear. Thank you so much for watching and keep making coffee you love.